Hey, buddy.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Collection Wars on a Tuesday night.
Yeah, it's different, huh?
It is different. And I think, obviously a lot of people don't know, and we haven't really talked about like whether we're gonna kind of keep it on Tuesdays, but it looks that way, right, Michael?
Yes,
Looks like
sir. Yeah.
we're gonna try to do it Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Central,
Central.
right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
that looks like it's going to be the current schedule going forward. We might still jump on a Saturday here and
Yep.
there, right? But
Absolutely.
to try to keep the consistency going Tuesdays.
Yeah, I know a lot of them that we missed tonight will be watching us. So,
Yeah, yeah.
so
So
yeah. So I guess we'll jump right into the presidential debate.
yeah, right. Oh no.
And half of our viewers are in the bathroom right now throwing up. No, but no, I'm just all kidding aside.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everybody's heard. I think I'm the only one that didn't jump on Instagram and do a post in regards to the passing of James Earl Jones.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean it's sad, right? Because I think a lot of our heroes, a lot of our all the actors that we looked up to in the 80s and
Mhm.
70s, they're all in their late 80s, early 90s, right? I mean, James Earl Jones, obviously he's 93. uh,
Yeah,
John Williams, right? John Williams is 91, right? I think
yeah, yeah,
91. So, and again, he's missed a couple of the last performances, and so it's just Harrison Ford, right? Harrison Ford isn't he like in his 80s now?
yeah. He's in his 80s. Yeah, there's so many of them. There's Harrison and yeah, it's crazy. George Lucas. I mean,
George Lucas.
yeah, I just
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
sad because it seems like a lot of them. Like it seems like I was talking to a friend this morning about this subject, and like Clint Eastwood. I mean, he's I think 93 or 94, and it
mhm.
seems like he was just last year 90, and all of a sudden just aged a year, and he's like aged 4 years in a year. So it
Yeah,
just it's all going by so fast.
yeah. Well, it's just like it feels like only yesterday we were watching him in like Gran Torino, right? Or like the movie where he still
Yeah,
looked very like active.
yeah,
Like it still
100,
looked like, Clint Eastwood. And all of a
yeah,
sudden you see pictures recently and he's just like a little old man. Like it's
yeah,
wild, right? But that's why it's so important, I think, with what we do here on Collection Wars and really try to kind of bring back that nostalgic feeling, right? Because
mm,
that's really what we have right now, right? We have like all of these movies, all of these cool things that we grew up with that we want to try to keep alive, right? Because, you know, like tonight's show, I think is a perfect example, right? The
yes,
BMX like craze, right? In like the 70s and the 80s. I mean, and even in the 90s, right? Because I was still all about the Diamondbacks and the GTs, and that was like even the early 90s.
yes,
They're like my dream bikes. So, and it's sad because I don't see like the younger kids being as like pumped up about this type of stuff. So when you
yeah.
told me we were gonna have our buddy Sean here on, I was excited because I think our viewers love that stuff, right? And it's as much as we talk about movies and pop culture, the BMX craze was a huge pop culture craze, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, knowing Sean, and I actually got to meet Sean at Dark Side. He was, pointing out, one of the bikes that I had up on the wall, and
Mhm.
and yeah, it's crazy because, like you were saying, the nowadays generation, bikes and stuff,
Mhm.
they're still making BMX bikes, but just not on the level like they did back in the day. And the craze is kind of like when the movies were out, how cool they were. When the bikes were out, how cool. When the skateboards were out, and
Yeah.
and with all this nostalgia, I'm just trying so hard to hang on to it. I think a lot of us are, and we'll talk about it when we bring Sean on. He's a super awesome dude. And man, I love his passion for BMX and I look forward to hearing his story. But the biggest thing, me and him had a conversation we'll talk about a little bit when we bring him on when I was over at his shop. But just, cold, hard facts of where we were,
Mhm.
where we are now, And Gabe, where will we be in 10 years when it
Yeah.
comes to the nostalgia of these things that are important? But we'll jump into that when we bring him on. And
Yeah. So I think we just wanted to say, you know, it's unfortunate to hear that, you know, obviously the passing of James Earl Jones, but again, I think it's a great opportunity to kind of think back on all the great work that he's done, and again, kind of remembering some of those movies and remembering that era that, you know, just meant so much to us, just even now as grown-ups, which is actually a great segue into our next guest. So
yes, and before we jump in with Sean, you know, when it came to James Earl Jones, you know, all these different posts.
mhm,
I know ILM did a post,
mhm.
and it was with him as Simba, the voice of Simba, and I mean, I got goosebumps just hearing that voice.
Yeah.
That such a powerful voice, and the level that it was taken to. And of course, he was a great actor as well, you know.
Yeah.
And he's done so many great movies. I forgot about um, uh, golly, Field of Dreams.
Oh yeah, me
That's
too.
yeah, and of course Sandlot, all those things. But Field of Dreams gave him a chance to really act. I mean, obviously when he did all the things that he did back in the his younger years before Star Wars existed, a lot of people aren't even aware of that stuff.
Yeah.
But it was really really good stuff. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it just seems like it's coming and coming, you know. So
Yeah. So just guys, really quick. So Darren, he watches us all the way from the UK.
hey, Darren, what's up?
Normally he watches us the next morning, right? When after we post a show. But I just recently met Darren at in Florida. He's on vacation with his lovely wife. So he gets to watch it live with us today. So thanks, Darren. It was great to finally meet you in person.
Absolutely, that's awesome. Well, thanks for joining us this early morning for you. So,
No, he's in Florida right now. He's on
oh,
vacation.
he's right now in Florida.
Yeah, he's on vacation on Florida. So
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
he's watching live. Yeah.
Very cool.
All right. So let's bring our guest on.
There he is.
Hey,
How you doing, man?
I'm excellent. Thanks for having me on the show. And just to set the record straight, I didn't pay Michael to hype me up like that. So thanks, Michael. I appreciate it.
Nah, man, you're awesome, man. I love. By the way, how's it going, buddy?
Oh, hey.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you broke up a little bit. Sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah, I was just saying, how's it going? Yeah, it's, you know, I love your passion, Sean, for the BMX and what you do for. I know you've got a really huge following on Instagram and YouTube and what you do to, you know, it's not necessarily the Star Wars thing and a lot of the different type of collections, you know, but it's like Gabe said, it's all these 80s things and what you do for the bicycle community. It's rad. It's badass, dude. So.
Well, thank you so much. You know, it's interesting because it's all the same demographic. It's all basically the same age group of folks that were so impacted in the late 70s to late 80s timeframe, the Gen Xers, if you will. And it was Star Wars and Rocky and Karate Kid and BMX stuff and skateboard stuff like you talked about earlier. All of that formed who we are and created that part of us that now we're looking back trying to grab that nostalgia and hang on to it so much.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us a little more than others.
Right?
That's no doubt. That's for sure.
But yeah,
by all of our backgrounds, we're part of the sickness, I guess, of collecting.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. Well, so I was going through you know your account, actually looking for a picture to use for our thumbnail, and I just started going through your account, and man, that just threw me back. I mean, especially like the GT. For me, it was like the GT. I like always just wanted, like, you know, and my friend had one. We'd always, you know, just be super jealous of them. What sparked the passion for you to kind of start in this hobby and
oh, that goes way back, honestly. I started racing probably when I was about 5.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just kind of, as I got a little older and your parents allow you to go a little further, that was the way to explore. So it was my way of going to that hill or to my friend's house and then building a jump, and just all that freedom that you had back then on a bike. Just, it was unmatched. And then as you get older, I raced all the way up through high school, probably like junior year, probably. And senior year, I got a little serious and ended up joining the military and just kind of forgot about the bike thing for quite some time. And then I had kids, and we lived in Rapid City, South Dakota. They had a BMX track. And I thought, man, I'll get my kids into that. I really enjoyed it. And then I couldn't stand seeing them ride the track, and I wasn't. So I got a BMX bike. And I went out there and realized I was out of shape. I hadn't trained. When I crash, it hurts a lot more. And we didn't do it for very long. My kids did pretty well in it, and I didn't do so great. So I realized at that point, maybe I should do something other than race. And so I put it all on the back burner again. And then I just came across the bike and thought I could build that. And so I did. Probably about 10 years ago, I picked up a bike, and it was literally at my aunt's house in the backyard, halfway under the dirt. So I pulled it out and I said, whose bike is this? She goes, oh, you can have it. So I brought it home. I researched how to clean rust off of chrome and all kinds of things. And back then, 10 years ago, it wasn't as popular as it is now. And there was no resources yet for all of these available things that we have now. So I spent a lot of time on eBay, and I still do. That's my number one go-to source for parts and stuff like that. And I built that bike, and I thought that's kind of cool, but it wasn't a bike I had a connection to or a memory of. It was a Haro Group 1, but it was like a 90s version. I was looking for something a little older. So got rid of that one, and I bought a GT Performer on eBay, which is interesting because I didn't have a GT Performer either growing up, but it was a really rad looking bike, and it had what is now called a coin roll on it. It was a 91 white with black splatter paint, and it was just the frame and forks, and I built the whole bike, and I loved it. It looked really cool. My wife also loved it, and it quickly became her bike, and I never got to ride it. So I said, okay, I'll do that again. So I found a dyno comp, and it was chrome, and I built that bike out. And then her and I just rode bikes around the neighborhood, and then I was hooked from that point on.
Man, that's awesome, man. And so, I mean, you're talking about, like, you know, some of the bikes that you had, obviously, you know, or that you looked up to. So what would have been your dream bike as a kid, like back then? Like if you were to like
right here, this baby blue and gold, it's a 1983 SCPK Ripper. And that's what I raced in high school. So I had to sell it when I joined the military, and I always wished I still had it. So when I got into building and collecting, I was always on the look for that bike up there. And then once I found it, I said, that's the bike I'll never get rid of. If I'm all done with this one day and I sell all of these, that bike will probably still be hanging around somewhere.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. And again, look, I mean, I feel like it's making a little like resurgence, right? Like around like the community. Like, I mean, Michael is a perfect example. Michael all of a sudden got all into BMX again, right?
Yeah, got like 15 grand into 4 bicycles.
Wait, and not only that, but now you got scuffed up a little bit.
Oh, I know. It's Sean's fault.
I told him, you're not 14 and 100 pounds anymore. You don't have the talent you thought you had.
Yeah. Oh man,
that's hilarious. Yeah, he said that. He goes, he said that because it was the bike that he helped find for me, and I had it at the house and put it together, and I was riding and pulled the wheel. I was riding a pretty good little 20 feet or so, and then all of a sudden, right on my back, I went. And he was like, "Yeah, once we get that thing hung up at Dark Side, you'll be a lot better off." Yeah. I'm like, thanks a lot, dude.
Yeah.
That's funny. Hey, Sean, well, I mean, speaking of like back in the 80s and stuff, obviously bikes and that, but like, what about like pop culture just in general, like movies? Were you ever into, and like, what were some of your favorite franchises back?
My go-to, at the movies and the arcades and just all that kind of stuff. Anytime a movie would come out, back then it was such a big deal to go with your friends to the movie theater.
Yeah.
And that was your weekend thing. You went to the mall, you went to the movies, then you went to the record store. Those are the things that you did.
Yeah.
So anytime a movie came out, I was all excited about it. And I'm a huge John Hughes fan. So like The Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, all of those, Weird Science, all these type of movies were my go-tos.
Yeah.
And they kind of still are. I still watch them. I must have seen, I mean, those movies a million times. And it's forever indented into me. And that'll always be a part of me. So a big John Hughes fan.
Seemed like a new John Hughes movie every weekend. You know what I mean?
He did a lot of them in a few years time frame. And he always used the same people, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah.
He had a group of actors that he would use them over and over again.
Yeah.
So everyone, even though she wasn't the prettiest girl, we all loved Molly Ringwald and those actors back then, Emilio Estevez, the Brat Pack as they were called, which they hated being called that and they were labeled as that. But that's who they were, and that's who we idolized. The clothes, the hairstyles, the attitude, all of that symbolism back then. You'd see people, whether they're rock stars like Billy Idol, put all the buttons on his jacket, or Madonna with all the rubber bracelets on her wrists. Like, these things formed who these kids were back then.
Yeah.
Same thing with the bikes, same thing with the skateboarders. They would see a bike of a guy that was influential to them and they would go, man, I want that bike, or I want that skateboard. That image sold everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even movies like, like Rad and stuff. I know we'll get into that and talk.
I mean, that's a badass movie.
Yeah.
It's cheesy, but I don't even know if I told Sean, but I went when they call it's now official Rad Day, and that was about, I don't know, 5 months ago now, 6 months ago.
March 1st.
Oh, okay. Sean knows March 1st. So we went and saw it at the movie theater, and it was the first time I had ever seen it. And can you believe it? And it was cool because it was like a time warp on something that was kind of a cult. Let's be real. It wasn't popular back then.
It wasn't. No,
as it is
not
now.
even a good movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really isn't. Neither is BMX Bandits, but now they're more popular than they ever were.
Yes. And I always tell people that, Rad is Rocky in BMX. It's kind of the same type of, have you seen it, Gabe, or no?
I haven't, no.
Yeah.
I've seen it when I was a kid.
This guy hasn't seen a lot of things.
When I was a kid, I watched it, but I don't have like vivid memory of it.
Gabe, your homework this weekend is to go watch it.
Yeah.
I know. These guys gave me so much crap for not watching Alien and Aliens until I was like, look, I was a kid when those movies came out. Yeah, I was little, like I was scared. My parents aren't gonna let me watch them, and I just never watched them. But
we watched like Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street when we were.
Those I watched for some weird reason, but not Alien for some
only
reason.
because you wanted to see the titties. But I didn't say that. We're not. Just kidding. Just kidding. Fast Times at Ridgemont, man, what a great one.
Ever. Fast Times at Ridgemont High is my all-time best movie. I love that movie.
Oh man, my favorite part was getting out of the swimming pool. Just kidding. I actually lost my virginity to that video. But you know what was cool? What I love about that, because Denise and I watched it just the other night, and what I love about that is not just the music but you see them in the malls, like you were talking about, Sean, and just that. And it's funny, you kind of were saying it a little earlier about 10 years ago, and it's kind of funny because a lot of things, like a lot of the Gen X people, I guess, were bored with where we were going in our culture and decided to fall back on the 80s. We were hoping maybe that we'd fall into another generation of really kick-ass 80s, and it just never happened. So we're all like, whether it's Gabe, in the 90s, like his childhood and the Star Wars, and the music, and it's just we're all falling back and putting all of our life and finances into what we used to have. We want it back so bad.
Yeah.
I heard something really interesting. I retired from the military after almost 28 years, and you go through a week-long adjustment right before you retire to like what to expect and this and that. And they had a guest speaker come up and he says, a lot of you, if you joined at 18, 19 years old and you did an entire career in the military, you don't know what it's like to not be in the military. So once you're out, you'll almost revert back to prior going into the military. So, okay, that's fine with me. That's 17, 18-year-old me behind me, and I'm just living that life out. And it was the 80s. So not a bad place to go back to, and I'm pretty happy there. So once I retired and went, full bore on this, I come out here and turn on 80s music and just work on 80s bikes, and it just makes me happy. And that's instead of, going out there and getting a cubicle job somewhere and just really kind of hating my life after the military. I'm trying to make something of it to where I can just enjoy the latter years of my life.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I think that's what's so cool about, the little community we built around, Collection Wars is that, sure, like we talk a lot about Star Wars, but it's really way beyond that, right? Star Wars just happened to be kind of the franchise that kind of brought us together. But as we were doing these shows, we start kind of remembering a lot of these extra things and like, the arcades and, the different games and all that. And it's just like, it's like a comforting feeling, right? To just kind of go back to that time. So
bills, mortgage payments, stress, or any of that. It was wake up, roll your jeans up and put on your favorite, print t-shirt and go hop on your bike and go to the arcade or the mall. That's all we worried about. We didn't text your friend. You rode to his house and knocked on his door to see if he was home.
Yeah.
So
man, and that we talk about that when I hop on the mic at Dark Side, I talk about the Gen X years and the bicycles and like with the skateboards and the video games, drinking out of a water hose, how we would get on our bikes and be gone all day long after cartoons on a Saturday morning. And just, I remember like us riding to the mall, which back then, I mean, my mom would have whipped my ass if she knew how far we rode.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, it was like a serious journey to the mall. It's like, no way did you ride all the way over there.
No.
So I grew up in Fullerton, California, and it was a 22-mile bike ride to the beach. And all my friends and I would do it in the summer. Wow. And there's a concrete flood control called the Santa Ana River Trail. And we would ride that thing all the way to the beach, jumping over the water. It was only a couple feet wide. And going up the embankments, and eventually we'd get to the beach. But a flood control goes downhill, and that means going home would be uphill another 22 miles.
Oh,
so
man.
we conveniently have a flat tire, have to call one of our parents to come get all of us. And, there was no hole, but the tire was flat. We just let the air out and then fill it up when we get home and go for another bike ride.
Yeah, that's awesome.
22 miles to the beach, and we're probably all 14, 15 years old.
Yeah.
Is insane to think about these days. I would have never let my kid do that.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I remember, this was obviously kind of a little bit later, right? This is like, I guess it'd have to be late 80s, early 90s, where the same thing. We would actually go to, so I was in San Jose, California, and we would literally figure out how to get all the way to Oakland to go skate. And this was the skateboarding days. And we would go skate in Oakland. And that's like, wow, like that's another complete city. We'd get on the little Amtrak or the BART or whatever and just go.
Well, it's definitely a different world because I wouldn't even go to Oakland now in a car, let alone a skate.
I know, exactly. Thanks for all the awesome comments too, John, and some of the other guys. And you know what? I don't even like the movie Stranger Things. I don't think it would have been what it was if it didn't have gone back to the 80s. I don't know why I believe, but I truly do believe that a lot of the people that really took onto that one were like our generation of people that, whoa, 80s BMX bikes and, the malls and stuff. Did you notice that? Have you seen that?
Oh,
Sean?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So cool.
All right. But now let's get to the real question. Were you sporting the what were the pants called, Michael? Cavaricis?
Oh, okay. Hey, so these guys always make fun of my Z Cavaricis and my parachute pants.
I definitely had parachute pants, 100%.
Okay, what's up with that? You got a problem with Z Cavaricis?
Yeah. I did.
The mom
I went through
jeans.
that phase, the breakdancing phase. You know, breaking came out in the movies. Breaking to Electric Boogaloo came
Oh yeah.
and boom boxes and the Beastie Boys. It all became a thing for a summer or two.
I remember.
You weren't doing it. You were a total nerd. So yeah, I jumped on the bandwagon. Absolutely did that, and it was a good time. But I was also a surfer, so crossing over into that was fun. But I had to cross back over because I enjoyed the surfing a lot more than the breakdancing.
I'm not going to admit to any of that stuff on because we're live. Right? When we get off air, I might tell you if I did do that. Probably.
Yeah. I didn't say I was good at it. I just did.
Oh man, that's some funny stuff. I remember it very well.
Yeah.
That's a good.
Yeah. Well, Sean, I mean, would you mind kind of showing us around your place there and throwing us back in time with some of these bikes? And
sure. Let me pull the camera off this.
Yeah.
The phone off.
While he's doing that, I've been lucky enough to go check out his place, and he's so welcoming. And when I get there, I just don't want to leave. It's just such a awesome place.
There we go.
The big giant swatch. Yeah, like
the Swatch watch. I got a couple of regular watches.
We'll put you on solo mode.
There you go. And so I got that at Mall of America. It was hanging up in the Swatch shop, and I convinced them to give it to me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Not for free, but I was able to get it from them.
How old is that?
Oh gosh, I don't know. It's probably 85 or something.
Wow. Oh, badass!
It's huge too.
How long have you had?
I've had it for a year, so not very long.
Is Swatch still around?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Oh, I just bought one recently.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm actually working on trying to get them to be a sponsor, so we'll see if that works out.
That'd be awesome. And remember wearing multiple watches?
Yep.
Right. Two or three.
That's funny, Gabe. I don't remember that.
These are my Oakleys. I still wear them daily, so I just put them here in the shop. And then I just built this bike. This is a 1989 GT Pro Series team model. So it was the top of the line bike for the racers that raced on Team GT back in 1989. And if you look at the graphics, they're very arcade-like. Yeah. And they only made these for 1 year, those graphics. So pretty special bike. I just finished that like 2 days ago.
Wow.
Then I have a display case full of BMX parts and memorabilia. Got some old helmets down in there. A bunch of freestyle parts and seats.
Wow. That's
all the grips and then old school cranks. And
hey, real quick before we go out, hey, can you go back down? I got a question real quick. Go back down in the case. So the what's the story behind the red? Go up a little bit. The red seat right there with the lightning bolts on the side of those.
Yeah,
I know that was a real big one for like the Kuwahara.
Yeah, so that was an Alina seat back then. Sorry, let me get this over here.
Yeah, it was an ET.
So right, but that actually isn't an Alina seat. That was a partnership that Monza, it's a new bike company, did with Alina. So it actually says Monza across the side, but it was made by Alina in the mold with Alina, but it doesn't say Alina on it. So it's definitely not worth what an Alina seat would be worth, even though it's the same one. But it doesn't say it on it. So there's a difference.
Yeah, I've been trying to find an original one because I remember like on some of the bikes in the movie, you can see the seat. It does have the lightning bolt and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. So
I know there were multiple bikes.
We'll go across the top. We'll start up here. It's probably one of the most rare bikes I have. That's a 1979 Eddie King Torker. And I talked to Eddie King, and he thinks this is actually one of the bikes that Torker gave him when he was a factory-sponsored racer, because there's an E stamped on the bottom of the bottom bracket there. And Eddie was a very small guy back then, and the bike's pretty small. So he thinks that actually came from one of his bikes. And a lot of these racers, they didn't hang on to their bikes. Yeah. So they would sell them after a while.
Right.
Then the baby blue and gold is my 83 PK Ripper. And that's the one I told you that I'm probably going to keep forever.
Yeah.
And then this one is a 1983 Greg Hill bike. And Greg Hill and I lived in the same city for a while. Even went over to his house. He didn't know who I was, but we're friends now. And we talked quite a lot back and forth when I got a hold of this bike and decided to build it. So he was quite the influence in the decision-making process on that build. And I've only had that bike for about 3 months.
Wow. And did you like that one? Did you have to build kind of like parts, or did you buy it all in one?
I only had the frame and forks, and then I ended up doing everything. So powder coat, decals, every single part I had to buy for that bike.
Wow.
And some of them are.
I don't mean to cut you off, Sean. So Janine, Jedi Five. I'm sorry, this is Brad. My bad. He asked, do they still make replacement parts, or does Sean have to find new, old, like replacement stock? Like we've talked about that, me and you.
Okay, great question. Both. So a lot of the parts are reproduction or old, and you're only going to find the old ones on places like eBay or forums or anything like that. But there are a lot of companies out there now making these reproduction parts like Pork Chop BMX, Planet BMX. You'll find like the Skyway wheels, the Diacomp brakes, because a lot of these companies are still in business. And now that the BMX craze kind of took off again, they're reproducing them using the same machines, using the same tooling and everything. They're just brand new and not old. So a lot of the parts are either in my collection reproduction or restored. Some of them were even new old stock, which are getting very hard to find and very expensive. So for me, if I'm going to sell a bike and still be profitable, I have to have a blend, if you will, because if you make one all new old stock or old parts, the price goes really high and you lose a lot of potential buyers when you get into the $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 range for a 40-year-old BMX bike.
Yeah.
So on all of these bikes, a lot of these obviously are bikes that Sean, you restored, correct?
Correct. Every single one of them.
And yeah, so you'll get like one that'll be beat up, and you'll take the frame, you'll get it blasted and repowder coated, correct?
Correct.
And then
Craig Hill bike is a perfect example of that. That was beat to death. It was actually black when I got it. So I restored it. I had a powder coater repowder coat it. I re-decaled it and then sourced every single part and built it.
Wow.
Man, that's so badass.
Awesome.
But the goal is to keep as much of the original
Right.
parts on them as you possibly can, correct?
Yeah. So the trick is, though, there's two types of builders out there. I'm going to hit on this and it's going to ruffle some feathers, but
Do it.
the custom builders like myself, or the purist. And the purist wants to build a catalog perfect bike. And there's a place for people like that in this community, and that's fine. But not one of my friends rode a fully complete stock bike. The first thing we did would go to the glass cabinet at the bike shop and find an anodized part,
Yes.
rips, things like that that would
Yep.
customize your bike and personalize it
Yep.
to you. So my way of building bikes is that same thought process. I want it to be not like everyone else's bike. I don't want to pull up to a bunch of bikes and they all look the same. I want the kid, if I was still a kid, look over and go, oh, that's cool. I like that. Where'd you get that? That type of conversation is the conversations we had as kids.
Yeah.
Yep, that's exactly right. I remember one of the big things I would do, Sean, is ride to the bicycle shops. And if it didn't have the front brake deals on getting the brakes or replacing the seat or actually, because the cheapest thing I think at the time was getting new pads. you
Yeah.
know?
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, that's great memories. I was telling Sean the other day, I would love, and I'm sure you can still do it today, but it's one of the greatest smells in the world is walking into it was when I was a kid, smelling the tires and
Right, the
stuff inside those
tires.
bike shops.
Yeah.
Funny you
Yeah,
say that. I got
yeah.
a brand new set of tires today and I opened the box and just was hit with that.
Yeah.
Man, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So let's keep on going with the
Sure.
the tour in there. So that white one, man, that's
That's a 1987 GT Mach 1. It's a custom build, but I wanted to build that Huntington Beach look, and I wanted just to look like you're at the beach with that bike. And It even has like the old Joe Cool surfer guy on the number plate from back in the Town and Country days. And the bike just screamed beach to me. So that was my motivation in building the colors that I did with that one.
Yeah, I love the colors.
And then this bike's pretty special right here. This blue one is actually a brand new bike. And a little backstory on it. Tommy Brackens, and the picture it's buried up. Let me see, I'm backwards on this. It's behind the front wheel up there on the wall. But Tommy Brackens raced for GT, and let me go back because this is going to take a second here. So GT built a bike for Tommy Brackens to race, and he was a national champion. And I'm friends with Gary Turner, GT, and his son, Craig Turner. And GT started because Craig, the son, was racing, and Gary noticed that the bikes at the racetrack back in 1970, whatever it was now, I can't remember off the top of my head, they were like Schwinn Stingrays and things like that. Well, Gary was a welder and said, I can build a bike better than that. So he built a bike, and Craig raced it, and Craig kicked everybody's butt at the track. So the other dads were saying, hey, Gary, can you build me one? Gary thought, yeah, sure, $25 back then, and just started building bikes for these other guys at the tracks. And then it became Gary Turner Bicycles, shortened to GT later, and that's how GT came about.
Nice.
So Craig Turner is still building bikes with GT, and now they're calling these old school Legend Series bikes GT Nation. So they built this Tommy Brackens bike only in a 26 and 29 inch, but then Craig drove from Arizona to Texas to give me this frame and fork. It's a one-off, so there's only one of them, and it's a GT bike. But here's the cool part. The serial number on it is actually stamped Rad BMX. So I thought that was the coolest thing. I kind of came full circle when my name and GT are on the same frame. I thought that was pretty rad.
Man, that's a great story.
So that's a one of a kind up there. You won't see that anywhere else.
Yeah, that's badass, dude. Congrats on that.
And then the Hutch, that's a big brand name, one of the higher end bikes. They were very expensive back then. And this is a 24-inch bike. So it's a little larger, more rideable for, bigger people or adults. They have a 24-inch cruiser class, always have. But I ended up getting this bike and did a full build on it. All I got was the frame and forks when I got it. But it's all old school parts. So like the Sagino crown cranks, Sagino sprocket. I polished out or had the the seat clamp, the SR seat clamp polished. The stem was repainted and polished. Just a lot of restoration on that bike to make it look old.
Man, I always thought the Hutch you're seeing was more of a high end. I always thought that was like one of, and I don't mean to sound retarded, but I don't remember. But I thought it was like kind of the crappy bike.
No, not at all. They weren't really big in California where I grew up. They're kind of a Midwest East Coast bike, but they're very high quality and now very collectible and sought after as well. So
wow.
I've had several of them over the years. I built this one recently and I thought this is a really great representation and I could ride this. It's a 24-inch. I could take it off the shelf right now, take it to a racetrack and race it. It's just the perfect combination of new and old right there. So I really enjoy that bike.
And I bet that one's hard to keep clean.
Jeez, yeah. So white looks really great until you ride it. Then it does look so great.
Yeah, I can't even ride it.
So I'm going to give you guys an exclusive. Nobody's seen this yet.
Nice.
This red and black bike I just built today, and it's the oldest bike I have. This is a 1978 MCS Spider, and it's just all old, and it's just an amazing bike. I've never had one. They're really hard to find. I'm sorry, the camera's flipped, so every time I go to move, I'm moving the wrong way. But
no, you're doing perfect.
It's really messing with me. But
no, I promise it looks great.
Super cool bike. They're very small. It's still a 20-inch bike, but the top tube length is shorter. So MCS was made by two brothers in Florida that started this company. They're still in business, but they don't make bike frames anymore. They make like sprockets and things like that, brake cables. So it has an MCS brake cable, MCS stem, and MCS sprocket. MCS seat post, but the rest is all other brands and parts. But just finished this today. I'll probably be posting it on Instagram tomorrow so people can see it, because it's been hiding out in the background for quite a while.
Hey, just a tech question. What's
Sure.
the difference between a straight up seat post versus the one like that one, like the Paul Crew? What's the one that I got?
The layback.
Yeah. What's the difference between that?
So that is a great question. So bigger riders would traditionally want something like this to give them more space between the seat and the bars.
Okay.
But this also being a very short top tube, you are sitting pretty close between the seat post and the stem already.
Okay.
So I decided to go with a laid back seat post to give you a little more room in here. If it's a longer top tube, like that blue one up there, I put a straight seat post on it. So there is a purpose.
Okay.
Sometimes it's just cool and you want it. So that's what,
I think it's easier to pull wheelies.
Maybe you should have put a straight one on yours.
That was perfect.
Yeah.
This is that was great, dude. I owe you on that one. Hey, this is a great story too. I love this one right here, this bike.
Yeah, super rare. This is CW was made in Placentia, California, the next town over to where I was from. So we saw quite a few of these around the neighborhood. This one, however, with the lightning bolt on it, you can see there in the frame. There is a story behind this. Every bike company back then was trying to set themselves apart from the others. So they went to a trade show and they thought, what can we do different to try to get people to come to our booth? So they did this frame with the lightning bolt, because you remember in the 80s how cool lightning bolts were.
Yeah.
So they built a bike with a lightning bolt in it just to get people to come to the booth. Well, they got everybody to come to the booth and thought, man, maybe we should put it into production. So they did. So they did a limited production on them, then found out that they were actually breaking when they were racing them right at the lightning bolt. So they stopped making them. They told people that did have them, don't race them anymore, and they're probably going to break. So extremely rare bikes. This is actually the second one I had. The other one I had was all chrome and black, and I ended up selling it. It was kind of early on when my company was trying to grow a little bit, so the money I was offered was pretty ridiculous. I'd be dumb to say no, so I sold it and then regretted it immediately. Randomly one night, this frame, fork, handlebars, and seat came up on eBay. I bought them immediately and then built the bike from there.
It's fantastic.
That's awesome.
Pretty
Yeah,
cool.
Matt just said it. I'm sorry. I talked over you, Gabe. Matt just said I was thinking of Huffy, and he's correct. That's not Hutch, Huffy.
Oh yeah, Huffy sucks.
Yeah.
I have one. That's another story, but my red line got stolen from an arcade, and my uncle worked at Huffy and gave me a Huffy, and I was so mad, and I got clowned by all of my friends.
That's a great story.
Yeah, it sucks. So
yeah, that's funny because the only bike that I ever got that my parents got me was actually a Diamondback, and it also got stolen at an arcade.
Yeah, mine got stolen at a bowling alley.
So scared to go home and tell my parents because I begged them for that bike, and oh man, I'm still scared to think about that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So this is my Grail bike. This is probably the most rare bike that I have, and it's a 1981 Cook Brothers Racing, made in Santa Ana, California, and it was a very high-end bike. It was a very expensive bike back then, so not many kids had them. And they're impossible to find. They were limited in production. There are not a lot of them out there. And the ones you do find are really beat up and just tore up. So I randomly came across this recently in Austin, Texas at a bike show, but it was just the frame and forks. And the guy wanted a gazillion dollars for it. And I kept trying to talk to him, and he just didn't seem interested in selling it for money. So I had a 26-inch GT Pro Performer that I've been riding around, and I just gave him the entire bike for the frame and forks of this bike, and then brought it home and started the hunt for parts. So it's got Cook Brothers cranks, the Cook Brothers stem, Cook Brothers bars. Finding these parts is just almost impossible. So it took me a little bit to build the bike, and I love chrome and blue. So it just came out in the perfect colors.
It's my favorite.
Yeah.
It's up there for me. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's definitely up there for sure.
Man, you know what's crazy? And I know it's like a lot of things like Gabe and I know, like Gabe can look at different type of lightsabers and tell you what company it is. But like looking at that, to me, it looks like a mongoose frame. And how you know all these different by looking at a frame, you know exactly what it is, you know?
So you're looking at the gusset and it reminds you of like your Moto Mag mongoose, right?
Yes.
So this has a hole in it. The Torquer up there has a hole in it there. And the MCS Spider right here has a hole in it. So they're all a little bit different, though. There's a lot of other bikes that have those, like a Webco, a Torquer, I don't know, just tons of different bikes. So it was a common thing. That's what I said earlier. Remember, I said bike companies are trying to do things to stand apart from each other. Those gussets were there for a reason, for strength.
Yeah.
And then they put a hole in it because they wanted it to look a little cooler. Sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't. So what else do you do other than a hole? Like I've seen all kinds of things put in there. So that was a thing for a while, that gusset right there. It got pretty popular. Moving down, let me see. This is
Man, this is great talking to you, Sean. I mean, it's a privilege to hear some of your knowledge, man. That's badass.
I'm just an idiot with a bunch of bikes, but thanks.
I don't think so.
This is a full custom build 24-inch Dyno Pro Comp team model that I had powder coated in neon yellow. And then we hand laid the black splatter paint on it. There's actually a 4-stage paint that we did. So this was a complete custom build.
Wow.
That's fun, right? Doing the frames. I bet that's really cool, taking an old frame and restoring it like to something like that.
It's a lot of fun. I'm not going to lie.
What year is that frame? What year is that frame?
This actually is a newer bike that was re-released.
Oh, okay.
Dave Volker, an old freestyle guy from back in the day that rode for Dyno, teamed up and started making these again. And it didn't look like this when you buy it. Trust me, it looks terrible. And I told Dave that. I said, I don't know what you're trying to do, but you're failing miserably. So do better. And I sent him this bike and I said, they should be looking like this. And he's like, oh my gosh. He kind of forgot where he came from, I guess, because this reminds me of what they looked like back then. Mm-hmm. What they're putting out now is really sad. So I had to fix it. This is a red line I just picked up. It's completely stock, 100% original. Oh, wow. And I don't know what year it is. Probably a 92 is what I'm guessing, somewhere in that era. But I'm going to do a full tear down of this bike. I'm going to powder coat it a different color. I've already ordered the same decals, so I'll have the same decals come back and put them on. So that'll be a build coming very soon.
God, you are sick.
Yeah. And then, I mean, these are just bikes that I'm working on.
He's so organized too, Gabe. I'm telling you, everything is in its place. It
has to be.
Yeah, just watching how he builds is amazing.
Yeah, I got way too much happening to be unorganized in here.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So 93 GT Pro Series, an 83 Diamondback. You were talking about Diamondbacks earlier. Yeah. This Silver Streak.
Yeah.
And then a 91 GT Mach 1 right there. So 3 future builds that are going to be done soon. And when I say soon, I don't know. Whenever that happens, I guess. Yeah. Man, but I do have all the parts. I collect all the parts in boxes and have it on there perfectly. So what I do when I build a bike, the reason I put these on the table behind me is, one, they were already there, but I had all the parts laid out. I'm a very visual builder. So I like to start with like a frame and fork set. And then I try to have a vision in my head or get motivated by a color. Sometimes I'm motivated by a decal set or whatever it is. And then the build process starts and I'll just go on a hunt for parts. So it'll be like, let's say this blue frame behind me, I went back and forth, white parts, black parts. Then I decided I'm going to use all polished parts on this one. The decals even have like a chrome in it. So it's really going to pop when it's done. No. The Diamondback, I haven't told anybody or shown anybody this yet, but it's all dark anodized blue parts. So that bike, I've already bought all the parts for that one as well. They're just behind the table. And then the Mach 1 on the end is going to have black and yellow parts. So like black and yellow Amy grips and a black GT seat, so on and so forth. Yellow brake cable. I have new decals for it. I just need to hand polish that, which really sucks. Hand polishing bikes, it's not my thing. You know, the arthritis, I'm old. It's terrible. So you know, when I say soon, I mean soonish.
Yeah.
Whenever I get around to it.
Yeah. So, Sean, so obviously there's a I'm sure a huge community, right? Like of just BMX fans, and
Hey, my
yeah, there
man,
you go.
my man.
So
Oh,
are there like, obviously there's forums, I'm sure there's like Facebook groups where people are like trading and selling stuff, right?
There is, yeah.
Yeah.
So I started this about 10 years ago on social media, and I was one of the only BMX accounts on Instagram at the time. And now it's everybody. There's so many of them. It's inundated with them. And I'd say half of them are even fake at this point. It's people scamming other people with photos of bikes that they don't even own. It's just gotten into this negative thing. So there are websites and there are Facebook forums. I try to stay off of all the forums, and I'll go to certain websites, but I live and breathe on eBay for the most part. I have trusted sellers that I buy from, that I've bought from over and over again, that are collectors of parts, and they sell them, or they're not like me where they want to build and restore a whole bike. I very rarely buy an entire bike. That's super rare. I like the build process. That's why it's in the name. So I like that accomplishment of picking something up that was probably never going to be built again, bringing it back to life, making it into what looks like now a brand new bike, even though it's 40 years old, and then passing that on to somebody is a great feeling.
Yeah, because I mean, not only the building process, but again, as like the customer, right? I mean, I'm sure their expression, like getting it, and it's like throwing them back into their childhood or their dream. You're building their dream bike that they wish they had. I'm sure that's also like a big part of it, right? Like,
Really.
yeah, this is a good question from Brad.
I'm reading that comment, and he's asking if I've ever done a themed bike like Fast Times at Richmond High. That's a great question. I get asked that quite a lot. I try not to, because I don't want to be the Orange County Choppers of bike building. So it's a slippery slope. I don't know if I want to do that. I've done one themed bike, and it's currently at the BMX Hall of Fame. So it worked out well the one time I did it. It's a Radical Rick bike. Damian Fulton, the artist of Radical Rick, it was in BMX Plus magazine back in the 80s, the cartoon strip in the back. He's like my brother from another mother, a great friend. Haro did a Radical Rick line of bikes, and it was terribly executed, like I talked about with the dyno. And so Damian's like, if I can get you one, would you do your version of one? And I said, I'd be honored to. So Haro sent me a bike. I pulled it out of the box, threw up on it a little bit, then stripped everything off that bike, sent it to powder coat, got it back. A friend of mine made some decals, one-off custom decals for it, put those on it. The only thing Haro on that bike is the frame, forks, and hubs. Everything else has been completely replaced. And last year's induction ceremony at the BMX Hall of Fame, they were doing a Radical Rick display, and Damien asked me if I can put my bike in it. He had never seen the bike. I'd never seen the display. I drove all the way to Tulsa, Oklahoma, walked in, and the display matched the bike perfectly, like we coordinated this. And it's still sitting there today. The big news is I'm going back to the Hall of Fame in a couple of weeks, and I'm bringing all of that back here, the display, the bike, everything. So I'm going to have an entire wall in this shop that'll be designated just for that, because it's pretty massive.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember you telling me about that. The
BMX was at the ceremony.
Josh, yeah. Josh is a cool dude. I met him at the ceremony in person for the first time last year. He's going to go this year. I'm going to go this year. We're going to hang out. Josh is a great guy, a newer bike builder. He's also bought a couple bikes of mine. So thank you, Josh, for that. Definitely a rad dude. I'm glad he's on.
The friends yes, the friendships that you make in the community, like Gabe and I have met, together, through this channel. Even we've made so many awesome friends. And
definitely,
I guess this might be somebody the BMX Basement. He said something that's really true. People don't realize how long that it takes to collect all the right parts for these bikes.
This is my friend Justin. He lives in Maine. I've actually been in that basement and filmed an entire video on it. But Justin is one hell of a collector. That is impressive, his collection of bikes behind him. Whereas my collection, they're all built bikes. He'll have 50 frames lined up of just amazing, amazing bikes. And for me, the OCD drives me a bit nuts because I'm like, I just want to build every single bike there. But the guy works his hiney off and he's just super busy. He has other things going on in life where I get to do this full time. I'm really lucky to do that. He doesn't have the kind of time I do to sit down and focus and build bikes, but one of the best bike builders I've seen. His bikes are absolutely amazing.
That's awesome. Might have to have him on sometime.
Yeah.
Both of y'all.
Yeah. And what I love is the fact that, like, even though, like, you know, it's, you know, we have like model builders and, you know, Star Wars collectors and toy collectors, I feel like it's still that same passion, right? Like even the building part, right? We have a lot of model builders that same thing. It takes some years to collect the parts because, you know, they're specific model parts, and putting them together and the process, I guess, is what really drives them. So it's really cool to hear that even though they're different hobbies, it's still the same, right? So
exactly the same. It's the same demographic, the same aged guys. It's that era, like I said earlier, just really imprinted on us so greatly that there aren't a bunch of people from the 2000s collecting things from the 2000s.
Right.
What's to collect?
That's a fact.
Yeah.
So,
I think the only thing that I've seen is Pokemon cards, right? And if that, but I mean, compared to like everything else that we have.
But the innovation and the evolution of things in the 80s, like you saw bikes go from like the banana seat bikes through the progression of some of these BMX bikes up into what it is now, where there is no style to these bikes whatsoever. The pinnacle of that was the 80s and early 90s. And after that, BMX dropped off worldwide. And it just started looking like cars of the 80s, where they all looked the same for a while. And now the bikes, you go to a bike shop, the only thing different is the stickers and the color. They all look identical to me.
Yeah. You know, the one thing that did give me hope, and I don't even know if it would be, I don't know how the trend is going, but so I'm actually in California. I'm in Southern California, and we went up to Orange County. And I think, I forget what the city, we were there for like my niece's basketball game. They were having like a tournament, but it was definitely in Orange County. And we went to this mall and we saw a gang of like maybe 10 to 13-year-old kids with the electric bikes. There's the Super 73s and like, you know, these yeah, like that. But there's like a gang of them. There's probably like about 20 of them, all with their different little bikes. And I thought that was cool, at least just seeing them, and they're all riding around the parking lot. And I was like, that's kind of cool. Although, yeah, the electric bikes, I mean, I don't know. But I mean, the fact that they were out there all on their bikes, I was like, that's kind of cool, you know?
You'll never be able to talk about the metal, you know,
right?
sprocket hitting your shin and busting. hey, this is kind of a drab conversation, but do you remember, Sean, what you told me the other day? This was kind of like a sad reality. I was standing in your shop over there, and what you were telling us about the collecting. Bring that up.
So, like I said before, I started this 10 years ago at the very infancy of this trend, if you will. And I've watched the evolution of BMX get really popular. And in my opinion, 2020 to 2022 is the top of the mountain, the highest it was probably going to get. Now I'm starting to see the trend cool off, and I'm trying to figure out why. And then it dawned on me, we're getting older and older and older. And at what point are you going to want to spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for a bike for your man cave? It's 60, 65. That's probably not going to be a thing where you're in your man cave, chugging beers with your friends, playing darts, showing off the old BMX bike.
I sure hope so.
I know. Some of us probably still will, but the majority probably won't. They'll move on and play with their grandkids and go travel, whatever it is they're going to do. But I'm seeing a cooling in these bikes. And honestly, it's a little scary because this is a business for me. So I have to always think of what's next, or how do I change this and keep up with what's currently hot and not stay on the sinking ship, if you will, because I'm 53 and I feel like at 63, I won't be out here doing this. So there is an end to it at some point where it just becomes a couple guys have a small collection of 1 or 2 bikes here and there. We're not finding and hunting and building and selling like we are now in 5-10 years from now.
And that's what's sad is because, like in our Star Wars group, we've got a lot of people in our group of who collect, and you just kind of wonder. A lot of them are younger, right, Gabe? But most of the younger ones aren't necessarily high-end collectors, which is fine. But you just kind of wonder. I think that when it comes to the Star Wars figures in the old 70s and the vintage, those will always maintain a high value and it'll continue to climb maybe. But I just don't know to where it's all going to be like nobody gives a shit,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like you said, it's a generational thing, and yeah, as like the next generation that starts coming into, disposable income, they're going to be searching for their nostalgic, feelings, right? And yeah, like, what is that, right? Like you said, like it was like in the 2000s, like what was it, right? Like I guess there's some Star Wars toys here and there, new releases, but yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, that's why I think so many people, Sean, that come into Dark Side. I mean, there's people that I'll get on the mic for 5 minutes and they're bawling because I'm bringing back that nostalgia. Even the people that are older than us, especially that at the time they were like our moms. You know what I mean? That remember when they bought that stuff, those Star Wars figures for their kids, and so it's cool to see like people like because my mom's not around anymore, but at her age that are in my restaurant, hearing these stories and seeing this thing, and they remember, and seeing my generation of people in there with their parents and even their kids that are trying to pass on to you got to go see E.T. It's a badass. When we get home, you're going to watch it because it was a really good movie. Because nowadays the kids they see it, it's like boring. Or I had Haley riding that bike I crashed the other day that you helped me get. And she was out there riding it. You know what I mean? It was badass seeing that,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. Like we're on here right now just having conversations about the past. Yeah. And it's like I've said, I've been able to meet so many people doing this. It's opened so many doors, and my DMs on Instagram are full of people I've never met saying, oh, that bike brings back this memory. I had this bike. Here's a photo of my bike. And it's just this massive community of people that just want to share not only their memories, but maybe the bike that they still have that was in their attic or whatever. And I'm trying to buy it from them, but they're always trying to share these experiences. And it's crazy because I feel like we're all the same person, just a little different variances of our childhood. But we were all in movies. We're all into bikes. We're all into Star Wars. We're all into these things. So having me on here, thank you so much, because I'm sure your audience also has the same connection to bikes or skateboards or Legos or whatever it is that was a special moment for them. We're all pretty much the same kids from that era growing up, listening to the same kind of music, whatever. It's so good to meet people like that out in the wild too. It's crazy.
Yeah. And again, take advantage of it right now. Like you said, yeah, it might not last, another decade, just like our actors, right? And the pop stars and stuff that were around back then. Live it up right now, take advantage of it, enjoy it. Because like you said, it's the sad reality is that, in 10 years, it is going to be harder to find some of this stuff, and it's going to be, less energy to go and try to find it. So the more that we can kind of introduce this stuff to the next generation, and Michael and I always talk about that. Sometimes we say, when we do these types of shows and when we're doing social media, it's not even about, showing the collection or a lot of that. Sometimes it's just about just memorializing it on the internet for a next generation, or even just our own children or our own grandchildren that are going to be able to like go online and be like, look at old grandpa, he used to love Star Wars, and look at grandpa, he used to love BMX bikes. Look at how cool, long after we're gone, they're going
Yes.
to be able to come back on the internet because it's going to live forever. And that's a cool thing, that they're going to be able to see us talk about this stuff and see how passionate we are. And maybe it'll spark something in them, and maybe it'll be like, hey, you know what? Grandpa had, that BMX. I'm going to go try to find that BMX. Or grandpa had these Star Wars toys. Let me go dig them up from the attic and, display them or something. So, it's always nice having guests on like yourself that appreciate this stuff and are able to share it, with the world. And, that's what this show's all about.
You said it so perfectly, and that's the whole reason I even started a YouTube channel, is to memorialize these things, document them.
Yeah.
So I'm able to go back and see the bikes that I've built, because at this point it's probably over 300 bikes that I've turned out and moved on into the world somewhere. And sometimes I even forget some of the bikes from back then. Now, I haven't done a video on every single bike, but the majority of the bikes I've filmed, or I've talked about things, or met some people from back in the 80s that were huge in the BMX scene that are now just doing everyday jobs, but they were superstars then. Yeah. And I'm tracking them down and sitting them down and having conversations just like we are, and sharing those memories. And all of a sudden they're glowing. They're right back to where they were in the spotlight back then. And so to put them behind a camera again, they just get all open and excited to talk about what it was like to be a superstar back then. And it's great to hear it on my end, because I was the kid just looking at them in the magazines or watching them on the skate park. And now I'm face to face getting their perspective of it. And it's really crazy.
We do that. Gabe and I, we have a lot of ex-ILMers like Roger Christensen, and he created the lightsaber, and did the Millennium Falcon, Sean, but
the Kenner designers, right? And
we've had the guy that created all that stuff, and it's the same thing. They're like, wow, it's not even. Oh, okay, cool. And then they get into Gabe's conversations with. It's just fantastic.
Yeah. Well, even like we had Don Post right on here. That was probably the wildest, because we all grew up with those masks, like knowing like Don Post, and then all of a sudden we have him on here talking about the process and how his company. It's wild.
Do you know who that is? Do you know who that is, Sean?
No.
Don Post is the guy who did a lot of like the masks that you see in Halloween, those masks. 3 More Days Till Halloween, Silver, Shamrock, that one. And he's also is responsible for the movie Halloween, the original Michael Myers mask.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah. He did the technically it's a Star Trek mask, right?
It's William Shatner's
mask.
He was captain, and they used that for the movie. That's his mask, and it's a cool story because it accidentally happened. It wasn't, it was, they just happened to use his mask.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And you would have never known that unless you talked to the guy and you got that information out.
Oh yeah, you'll learn it on this one, that's for sure. Yeah. So I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I'm 4 bikes in, and I think I'm going to be done at 4, unless. I mean, something tells I know something. So look, I know it's cheesy. I know, look, this guy's killing me. And you guys know I'm a lay down. So the thing is I really want a Rampart. I know it's like a Huffy. I know, but it was my first bike, that I remember. And that was the bike that was stolen at the bowling alley. That was my badass bike that ended up turning into a mongoose. And now all my bikes are mongooses,
well, speaking of, like, look at here, you sent me this video early on.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Sean, and all
brake for that bike here.
What's that? Oh yeah.
Front brake for you sitting here.
Oh yeah. This is one right here that Sean redid for me. That's awesome. A badass one. And hey, dude, tomorrow, what you got going on? Dude, I love the fact that this guy lives right down the road. It's a good and a bad thing. Bad for him because
I am editing a YouTube video tomorrow. Come on by. I'll put a front brake on for you.
See what I'm saying? This guy's awesome.
Cash is king, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Denise is like, where are you at? I'm over at Sean's, my new friend. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
How much is that going to cost?
I know, exactly.
What bike are you bringing home tomorrow?
He is responsible for spending a lot of money that I would have in my bank
know.
account. But yeah, he found a badass Lori Loughlin original Rad mongoose that had never been touched. And it was fantastic. He was very generous with me on it. And, you know, I really appreciate now that we have thanks to you, a really, really cool Rad collection on display at Darkside. So
yeah, now you have a proper representation of the bikes from the movie, and it's so much better and authentic now. It drove me nuts opening night when I went there. It's where I got my cup opening night.
Awesome.
I saw your Rad movie poster, and I looked up and I was like, he's got the complete wrong bike up there.
And hey, just so you know, he told me that too. That's not.
And then I need to find out who owns the place, and we need to fix that.
Yeah. And you did several $1,000s later. Thank you.
They're not cheap.
Just kidding, babe. It's several $100s later.
Yeah. $100. That's all it was. They're cheap bikes.
Yeah.
Man.
You traded for some pizza.
Yeah. Hey, that's a good idea on the next one.
No.
Yeah, it's like
No.
Sean, I know you're a grandpa, old geezer, and you're early bird because you wake up early in the morning working on bikes. I want to say thank you for coming on at 10 at night, dude, and our time, anyways.
My pleasure.
Man.
Yeah. It was great chatting with you. Thank you so much. And
for sure.
Yeah, hopefully, next time I go visit Michael, get to swing by and say hi. And
absolutely. You're always welcome. Gabe, good meeting you. And if I can just plug something real quick, if I ever sell bikes, it'll be on the website. On the website, I sell merch and all kinds of stuff. So radbmxbuilds.com. Check out the YouTube channel or the Instagram if you get a chance, and I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and right after this, I'll link all those in the description below. Awesome. So all our followers that watch our show, later in the week, they'll have all those links ready to go. So
thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for having me on. It's been great.
Absolutely. And to everybody that joined us tonight, I want to say thanks a lot so much for your Tuesday evening, after this crazy ass evening of debates. Yeah. I don't believe I'm going to go hang out in the motorcycle shop right now. Actually.
All right, guys. Well,
good night, everybody.
Next week, Tuesday, I think, hopefully. Yes.
Yeah, I think Tuesday. We got a really cool statue collection that we might be bringing on, which will be really fun to talk about. But these are the special shows that really mean a lot to me personally. And Sean, thank you, really. And Gabe, he was like, boom, let's do it. I love that. I know he's got that passion for bikes as well.
So, cool. Well, until next week, guys.
Everybody have a good night.
Good night.
You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing and go home.